A DACA recipient living in Utah is now stuck in Mexico after an error by the U.S. administration. Coming up, hear her plea to the governor.
A call to police about a suspicious car in Cottonwood Heights. The driver slumped over the steering wheel. We'll show you the disturbing discovery found inside the car that led to charges of animal torture.
East Canyon winds developing in the overnight hours. How strong will the wind gusts be? We'll let you know. Plus, the invasion of the inversion. Anything to clear out the haze? We'll let you know in the forecast.
Video going viral that a Midvale family says shows their neighbor harassing them and their children. Questions tonight about why police have not stepped in.
Nobody puts on the games alone. It is the whole state. It is the whole community.
And the push for Utah hosting another Olympic Games took a leap forward tonight. We'll show you.
Live from Utah's news leader, Fox 13 News at 9 starts right now.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Bob Evans.
And I'm Kelly Chapman. Due to a mistake out of their control, a DACA recipient who was living in Utah is now 1,600 miles away from her husband, unable to return.
Fox 13 News reporter Emily Tenser joins us live in studio tonight. Emily.
Bob, Kelly, because of this woman lost her job in Utah County and had to drop out of her master's program. Recently, her husband was hospitalized and she couldn't even be there for his health scare. Since the age of 2, Melanie Heiner has called the U.S. her home. She attended BYU, met her husband, and chased her dreams of being a social worker.
I was doing everything I could to be successful. And what hurt so much about the situation is that it wasn't anything I could control.
This summer, the DACA recipient had one last step to becoming a U.S. citizen. During their trip to Mexico, the couple says they discovered a U.S. administrative error meant Melanie could not go back to Utah.
That entire day and night, we just cried because we're like, we don't know what the future looks like anymore.
It's been almost 5 months and she's been stuck in Zacatecas, Mexico. It could take 2.5 years before her application is considered again.
It's just been full of anxiety, frustration, just a lot of bad news all the time.
But I remember having that conversation with her and just letting her know that I would do anything in my power to get her back.
Satne Siale grew up with Melanie in California and is now one of the organizers behind Utah with All Immigrants. Siale says people don't understand how difficult the process is.
It's so outdated, it's so convoluted, it's confusing. Even the document that Melanie would have needed to have prevented her from being stuck in Mexico, that document alone costs $900.
Her group flooded Governor Spencer Cox with Melanie's story in hopes he would bring it up in his virtual town hall Tuesday night.
Immigration is one issue that governors can't control. We know that the Constitution specifically says that this is the purview of Congress, and yet it does affect our states, and so governors do need to lean in and help to solve this problem.
He never addressed Melanie's case specifically, but she hopes someone will eventually listen.
If even possible, I would love to be home for Christmas, if that is something that's possible, and if not, as soon as I can.
Spokespeople on behalf of the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services don't have access to applicants' case-specific information, so to comment. But as for Governor Cox, he says he's in a group with other governors who in the next few weeks will send recommendations to Congress on how to fix the legal immigration system. Reporting live in the studio, Emily Tenser, Fox 13 News, Utah.
Emily, thank you. A Skyview High School student is recovering tonight after suffering cardiac arrest while weightlifting. A GoFundMe page for 16-year-old Dean Phillips says he was working out last night when he lost consciousness. He had to be flown to Primary Children's Hospital. The GoFundMe page says the extent of his injuries is unclear, but he needed to be put on a ventilator.
A Layton man who admitted to killing 3 family members was given 3 life sentences without parole today. Jeremy Bailey pleaded guilty to the murders of his wife, Anastasia Stevens, and her parents, Donald and Becky Stevens, as well as 3 of the family's dogs in October. Today, Judge Michael Doreda in the Second Judicial Court of Davis County pointed out Bailey was eligible for the death penalty.
So in sort of an an ironic twist in this case, your life has been spared. You have been extended mercy that you were unwilling to extend to your wife and her parents.
Charging documents reveal Bailey took his guns to a friend's house before the murders in May because he was thinking of doing it. One of the victims also reached out to a therapist before they were killed.
A 6-week-old kitten is recovering after Cottonwood Heights police found her yesterday morning in a parking lot inside a plastic sandwich box.
Fox 13 News reporter Jenna Bree shows us how this rescue saved the kitten's life.
Dr. Jessica Love says Athena came to Angel Paws Monday weighing just 1 pound, suffering from head trauma, singed fur, bruising, and a bloody eye.
Unfortunately, this is not my first time that I have seen cases of animal abuse.
Athena also tested positive for methamphetamine. According to police documents, a man and a woman face animal torture and other charges after officials found them illegally camping in a Cottonwood Heights parking lot.
We were dismayed by what we saw. It's really hard when we work so hard to help animals be healthy and well, to see people with such little regard for the life of this kitten.
Dr. Love says Athena is making an amazing recovery after receiving oxygen and fluids.
We have been really impressed with the resiliency of cats, in particular young animals. They have a tremendous capacity to bounce back.
In Cottonwood Heights, Jenna Bree, Fox 13 News, Utah.
If you would like to support Athena and her recovery, you can donate to Angel Paws Veterinary Services. You can find a link on our website, fox13now.com.
A group of Christmas carolers in downtown Salt Lake City tonight sang for a ceasefire in Gaza. People gathered at the corner of Main Street and South Temple to raise awareness and call for an end to the war in the Middle East.
It's absolutely abhorrent what's going on over there, and we're doing everything we can to speak out against it.
Organizers expected at least 50 people to join them for tonight's rally. Preparations for hosting the 2034 Winter Games are moving forward in Utah tonight.
The Salt Lake City, Utah Committee for the Games updated state legislators today. They say 100% of the venues have been secured, and there's a new logo they're hoping people will wear proudly. The committee emphasized the whole community will need to work together in order to pull this off.
Back in 2002, we ran a newspaper ad, and we said, long hours, hard work, no pay, better hurry. And we signed up. We had 24,000 slots, and we got requests from 64,000 people. That's Utah. Love to volunteer. So we will be.
Yeah, no pay, but those volunteers got a really cool jacket.
Yep.
I still sometimes see those, and I think it's so neat that people have that.
Those were cool coats.
That memory. This time around, though, the committee will be creating a website to sign up for volunteer opportunities. But first, there will be some paperwork to do over the next few months. We'll know for sure whether Utah will get the games around Pioneer Day next summer, next year, so toward the end of July.
Yeah.
Keep your fingers crossed until then.
Yeah, but we're on the road right now. Things are looking very good, and wouldn't it be cool for a lot of those volunteers from back in 2002 to volunteer again for the 34 games?
Get a new jacket with some new colors.
I wonder how many people have been, had the opportunity to do that in their respective city.
Yeah,
probably not many.
Not many.
That's something I definitely want to put my name in the hat there. That would be fun to do. Get excited for the Olympics. Of course, what we're wanting to get excited for is some storms and some snow to clear out this bad air. Sharing a time-lapse video from our Oquirrh Mountain camera, where through most of the day we had this deck of low-level stratus clouds just kind of hovering over the Salt Lake Valley. That definitely limited temperatures from climbing too much. Plus, mixed with haze and smog, we've definitely been seeing a decrease in that air quality over the past 24 hours. Current view from our Oker Mountain camera, we're not seeing that deck of low-level clouds, the haze hanging around, as we can see throughout most of northern Utah. We're in between that yellow and orange, seeing that impact as we move from Weber through Davis County, also spanning across the Salt Lake Valley and moving towards Utah County. Again, seeing that mixture where we're between moderate and unhealthy for sensitive groups. This is going to be an issue moving forward. So temperatures today, 40s here along the Wasatch Front, colder than yesterday, at least in Salt Lake City because of those clouds. What we're finding right now is a situation, low pressure building in. It's moving towards the south. This is going to set up some strong East Canyon winds right now, finding some stronger winds in Weber, Davis County, also turning towards Cache County. How strong do these winds get? As we do have a wind advisory in place. I'll answer that coming up in just a bit.
After disturbing video of hateful comments targeted at one Midvale family, we try to figure out what's going on.
Guns, drugs, jewelry, it's all evidence stored in this Salt Lake City police warehouse. But this report talks about how some of that evidence is missing. We'll tell you the numbers.
Lost and found writings.
How World War I letters from a Utah soldier ended up in the hands of someone on the other side of the country, and the effort to find his living relatives.
It's 50 years of Jazz basketball, and I sat down with the legendary point guard Ricky Green, and he shares his memories on Frank Layden.
Disturbing videos are making the rounds on social media. They show a family dealing with hateful comments right outside their home in Midvale.
Fox 13 News reporter Maithili Gubi has the latest on this developing story.
This is the neighborhood where I'm told that this has been happening. The family's attorney tells us that their neighbor, who we're not identifying yet because she hasn't been arrested, has been yelling racial slurs, curse words, and more. Not only at the adults, but also at the children in this family.
It's super gut-wrenching and heart throbbing to just see what this family is going through, so I can't imagine what they're actually experiencing.
Here's a portion of one video captured on the family's doorbell camera. The family, who did not want to be named, says they have about 100 of these kinds of videos. They say they've reached out to their HOA and police repeatedly for help. They shared 4 case numbers filed with UPD with Fox 13 News.
They've used every resource given, and there's just been no accountability for this type of behavior that is just inhumane and disgusting.
The family is working with an attorney, Tyler Ayers, to try to do something about it. He says her actions do classify as crimes.
Disturbing the peace, harassment, assault, battery, trespass. I mean, all of these things. And we're not even getting into the technical civil rights ones. Those are just basic common law claims.
Videos show, and the attorney tells us that the woman uses the N-word at the family and other hateful comments, and it's all captured on video. Ray Duckworth with the Black Lives Matter Utah chapter says it's important for people to see reality and stand up to hate.
It's amplifying a very serious situation and experience living as a Black person in Utah that I don't think we discuss enough.
In a statement from Midvale City condemning the hate speech and harassment, they named the neighbor. We were able to find warrants for her arrest. One was for disorderly conduct in August, another for property damage and destruction after court docs show she ripped the family's garden, and an arrest warrant for an assault in June, after documents say she forcibly poked her pregnant stomach before pushing her with both hands in the stomach.
They're just getting going, and they bought their first house, and it's pretty awesome. And then they have to put up with this. It's very disheartening to them. It's saddening to me.
Unified Police Department shared a statement with us saying, quote, "This harassment is being investigated. In addition to law enforcement solutions, the UPD Midvale precinct is working with other social service providers to bring about long-term solution for any individuals involved in the community."
Additional resources, like some people are saying, oh, this is a mental health crisis. Okay, so why didn't a mental health crisis team respond and do something constructive? Then they're saying, they've exhausted every route of police, right? Okay, so where is the police reform that holds people accountable for hate crimes? Where is that?
Now, there are still many questions that we don't have answers to yet. We don't know why the woman wasn't arrested even with outstanding warrants, and we don't know what those long-term solutions could look like for this community. We did try to speak to the neighbor, but weren't able to get a hold of her. Ray Duckworth also tells me that it has been heartwarming to see the community come out in support of this family. In Midvale, I am Maithili Gubbi, Fox 13 News, Utah.
A New Jersey woman is now one step closer to receiving some letters a Utah soldier wrote to his family during World War I.
The letters were written by Moritz Herland, otherwise known as Arnold, in 1918 when he was 22. He was stationed at Fort Winfield Scott in Northern California and would write home to his mother Lena in Salt Lake City. He talked about his experiences while in the Army and Navy, seeing his first camouflaged ship and helping with the 1918 flu epidemic.
Fox 13 News spoke with Wendy Shaw, the woman who found the letters. Shaw, who calls herself an heirloom hunter, found more than 20 letters from an auction and bought them for $20.
9 times out of 10, the families don't know those items exist, or they got lost. They were in an estate sale, they were in an attic, and they had no idea these items existed.
Isn't this fascinating?
Wow.
Look at how good a condition these letters are in.
Yes, this is remarkable.
It's impressive to be found so long after.
Typewritten and everything. Look at that.
Wow, this story has been up on fox13now.com for less than 24 hours. And we have already received a call from a viewer and a message from Erlen's great-granddaughter, Kylie Herlin. Wendy and Kylie have been connected to facilitate the return of her great-grandfather's letters. How about that?
Wow.
This deserves a follow-up story. We'll be on it for you.
We're going to follow this for sure.
That's just amazing. And the woman that goes to all these estate sales and garage sales
The
to look
heirloom
for
hunter.
these items to reunite with people.
Isn't that something? Breck, I'll tell you
really
what,
neat.
these are stories that you don't forget.
That is true. Bringing those treasures to those families members, that'll be a neat story, yes, to follow up on. Hey, we're following up on the weather here, what we're seeing across at least northern Utah. Concerns with air quality, inversion in place. I call it the invasion of the inversion, where we had a deck of low clouds that kept temperatures a little bit cooler than yesterday, but still, as we look at the almanac, the official high today at 42 degrees, so we're above average as we're going to be hanging on to the 40s. But we're going to be hanging on to the haze. We don't have any big storms in the forecast, at least for the near future. Outside right now here along the Wasatch Front, we have temperatures still in the 30s in Salt Lake City, 42 degrees at this hour in Ogden. Currently in Provo, we're at 35. Air quality forecast looking ahead. We've been in between the yellow and the orange, moderate to unhealthy. We're staying there. As you can see, moving through Friday and Saturday, potentially seeing some slight improvements as we build in high pressure. We don't have a lot of snow at the surface. We may potentially mix out just a little bit, but we want to get back to that green. We need a storm. We're not seeing it. What we will be seeing here in the overnight hours are some strong East Canyon winds. National Weather Service putting a wind advisory in place, which will be in effect until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. We're setting up a scenario where low pressure to the south, the flow turning eastward. Those winds do increase, especially near the canyon areas. We take a look at our computer models. The strongest winds on a window between 3 a.m. to 9 a.m. We could see wind gusts 25, 35, even 45 miles per hour, getting closer towards those canyons. So at the mouth of the canyons, if you have loose items, we have these holiday decorations, those inflatables, those lights, whatever it is, you'll want to secure them. They'll get knocked over and blown around. So be cautious of that. But once we get to about 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and especially heading into the afternoon, the winds just do die down. So short-lived, and it's a wind advisory. If it was high wind warning, we'd be talking about winds 50, 60, 70 miles per hour. This is not the case, but still something we have to be mindful of and prepare for. All right, there's the low pressure system moving to the south. Again, that's setting up that easterly flow. As the flow around low pressure counterclockwise, it's pushing in that stronger winds there going across portions of northern Utah. But then high pressure building in. This is what's keeping the storms away as it will push through, strengthen, and remain in place throughout the weekend into the beginning of next week. Models showing long term. I thought maybe next Wednesday we start to see some snow. We're pushing that back to Thursday and the storm is breaking up just a little bit. So hopefully those models are inaccurate, but right now it's showing a little bit longer before we see the storm, and we don't see a lot of snow in the forecast for the next several days. Tomorrow we see the haze, sunshine above the haze, central and southern Utah, mostly sunny conditions, but temperatures, again, maybe a little bit warmer, and in the areas we don't have a strong inversion, where we're looking at mid-50s in St. George, climbing to the 60s, a few clouds heading into the weekend, staying dry for the next 7 days. Northern Utah, it's 40s, staying in the 40s, and seeing that haze through Friday. Slight improvements for the weekend that allow temperatures to bump up just a bit. We're back in the mid to upper 40s, so fingers crossed, hopefully by the middle of next week we see some changes. We're back after the break.
A new study looks at the health effects of cannabis during pregnancy. Researchers at the University of Utah studied more than 9,000 pregnant women from across the country. They found people exposed to cannabis during any point of a pregnancy were at higher risk for complications, such as low birth weight, high blood pressure, and early delivery or stillbirth than women who did not use cannabis when they were pregnant.
We saw that when patients stopped using cannabis, so when they didn't continue across the course of the pregnancy, we didn't see as high of a risk for these adverse outcomes. So I think we can even tell patients when they're coming in early for care that stopping at any point is helpful.
The study was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association.
Community leaders came together to celebrate a big milestone in the fight against opioids in Utah. According to Utah's Controlled Substance Database, Utah reduced daily opioid prescriptions from 7,000 in 2017 to 5,200 in 2022. To mark this occasion, Intermountain Health, Bonneville Communities That Care, and the Know Your Script campaign unveiled a 20-foot high standing chandelier installation that looks like a pill bottle at Intermountain McCady Hospital's main lobby.
This display represents all the hard work by our caregivers, our physicians, and patients, as well as the many lives that have been saved.
Data from the Utah Department of Health and Human Services shows deadly opioid-involved overdoses have remained relatively stable in recent years. They would like to see that number decrease as well.
Thousands of pieces of evidence from crimes all across Salt Lake City are missing from this warehouse.
It's common for evidence room to sort of be one of the more neglected areas.
We'll tell you what police have to say.
A Utah lawmaker is proposing to bring something big into Utah.
They call it the silent killer, and it's been around since our ancestors first started using fire. A look at what to do to stay safe from carbon monoxide.
The fastest of them all. In honor of 80s night, I sat down with the former Utah Jazz point guard Ricky Green. You'll hear from him in sports.
This plain-looking warehouse is where Salt Lake City Police stores its evidence. Evidence from homicides, rapes, burglaries, drug crimes.
We have, approximately 230,000 property items currently in our warehouse.
Earlier this year, inspectors found some of that evidence was missing.
Well, it's really concerning.
This is a nationwide issue.
I'm Fox 13 investigative reporter Nate Carlisle. Salt Lake City didn't want us to have the numbers we're about to share with you.
But I think we do a good job at managing our property and evidence. Let's say we had something like a rock that was used to break a window, okay?
Derek Mears is the crime lab and evidence room director for Salt Lake City Police.
Once the case has been adjudicated or we've gotten approval through our detectives that that's no longer needed for the case, then we're authorized to dispose of that item.
How much evidence is missing or you are unable to locate at this point?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
We don't have those numbers.
But Salt Lake City's own inspectors had those numbers in this PowerPoint presentation given in August to Police Chief Mike Brown and obtained by Fox 13. Inspectors found there were 2,300 pieces of evidence police were unable to locate, including firearms, drugs, and jewelry. Another 7,500 items were determined to be somewhere, maybe out for testing or in storage, but their locations had not been updated in the department database.
If somebody's falsely accused, the best protections against that are the evidence, the protections in the system, and a good defense attorney.
Stephen Burton is the policy director for the Utah Defense Attorney Association.
And, this decision to cover this up undermines all three of those.
Burton calls it a cover-up because, he says, Salt Lake City should have notified defendants years ago about evidence room problems. Now that the problems are public, Burton expects defense attorneys will be asking SLCPD detectives and evidence handlers more questions on the witness stand.
Law enforcement takes an oath to uphold the Constitution, and part of that is disclosing when there may be problems with the evidence.
Mears says the missing items are probably somewhere in the warehouse or other storage, stuffed in the wrong box, or they were discarded and the records not updated.
There's no indication that any of these items are out in the public. Sometimes this happens. It's human error where somebody's going to scan an item to the wrong box, or as they scan a barcode on an evidence tag, it doesn't scan properly.
But the PowerPoint, which references a June audit, describes how the police department isn't throwing enough away. In one example described by auditors, SLCPD had drug paraphernalia dating to 1997, even though state law and department policies allowed for such evidence to be discarded years ago. The report also says Chief Brown and SLCPD were warned about issues during a 2018 audit, but they still weren't fixed. So you don't feel 2,300 is correct or accurate, but you're not sure what the correct number is?
I don't.
When Fox 13 first asked for this PowerPoint and audit report, Salt Lake City denied our public records request, stating the documents were only drafts. But when we obtained the documents independent of the police department, we didn't find them labeled draft or anything indicating they were preliminary. A Salt Lake City police spokesman in an email said the department is finishing an evidence audit and is unable to identify a date certain in which the audit will be completed.
It's common for evidence room to sort of be one of the more neglected areas within law enforcement.
Mitch Pilkington is the Crime Scene Investigation Program Director at Weber State University and has served with an organization that accredits evidence rooms. He reviewed the Salt Lake City documents for Fox 13.
If we're saying 5 is the average, I would place them at about a 5.
It's really not that unusual for police departments to lose drugs and guns and jewelry.
At some point in some time, every agency within the country has experienced a similar situation, maybe not to the same magnitude as we see here, but those are always kind of lingering issues.
The inspectors recommended Salt Lake City hire more people to work in evidence storage, and that seems to be the one part of the audit in which Mears agreed.
Currently we have 7 employees. Ideally, I'd like to, double my current employee staff.
Whether to hire more evidence handlers will be up to the police chief and the city council, which sets the police department budget. In Salt Lake City, Nate Carlisle, Fox 13 News, Utah.
Tomorrow on Fox 13 News at 9, Nate explains how people wanting to start a new life by having their criminal records expunged are stuck in a backlog of thousands of cases in Salt Lake City and neighboring police departments.
Can't wait for that story. And if you have a story that you would like the Fox 13 News investigative team to look into, send us an email to iteam@fox13now.com or call the tip line. The number's 801-536-1314.
With Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes on the way out after the Tim Ballard scandal, who's looking to become Utah's next AG? We'll show you coming up.
And could Utah get a lottery? Why a state lawmaker is pushing for it and what it would take to make it happen here. Stick with us.
Last Friday, Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes announced he will not run for re-election.
Today, one candidate officially did jump in the race. Former Utah Republican Party Chair Derek Brown launched his campaign. He says Utah needs a constitutional conservative, but also someone who puts Utahns first. Brown is the first declared candidate. Now, Reyes has been under a cloud over his relationship with Operation Underground Railroad founder Tim Ballard, and he opted not to run for a 4th term.
The Summit County Sheriff's Office says a deputy intentionally crashed into a wrong-way driver to protect others on the road. Reports of the driver going eastbound in the westbound lanes on Highway 40 came in at about 1 a.m. on Sunday. A deputy saw this and hit the passenger side of that vehicle. No one was hurt. Investigators believe the driver had been drinking.
Rural counties in Utah are getting money to help with housing repairs. A $50,000 grant from the U.S. Department of Agriculture will help up to 10 low-income families in Daggett, Duchesne, and Uinta counties. The money is for making health and safety improvements to homes, such as fixing electrical wiring, foundations, roofs, and heating systems. Another $50,000 grant will go toward renovating low-income apartments in Grand County.
Well, before we head to break, an update on the numbers as the strong wind gusts occurring as we look in Weber and Davis counties. We have a wind event here in the overnight hours. We'll update you on how strong the wind gusts get. Plus, how long is it going to last where we don't see any snow in the forecast? We'll talk about that after the break.
I'm Andrea Urban, and the Utah Jazz are on a tough stretch. Hear from head coach Will Hardy ahead of 80s night versus the Knicks tomorrow. And speaking of 80s, well, I had a really cool opportunity to sit down with the legendary Utah Jazz point guard Ricky Green to reflect on the past. I'll see you after the break.
I think it's time for adults to be able to make adult decisions and to be able to do it and put the money into the state of Utah.
A bill being introduced in the next legislative session could legalize lotteries in Utah. It's a change that you, the voter, could ultimately decide.
Fox 13 News political reporter Ben Winslow has the story you'll only see here.
Representative Kara Birkeland is proposing to legalize the lottery in Utah.
It would require a constitutional amendment, which would go to the voters, which is how it should be.
Utah's constitution prohibits gambling, including lotteries, but Representative Birkeland says Utahns are driving for the border anyway.
Over $200 million worth annually of spending from Utahns in other states.
She says that's money that could stay here in Utah and they could lower taxes with it.
When I talk to my constituents and they cannot afford to stay in their homes, our property taxes are just getting out of control, and we have revenue that's being spent by Utahns that could benefit. What moral high ground are we standing on when we say that's not government's role?
The legislation could face a lot of opposition from social conservatives and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a powerful presence on Utah's Capitol Hill. The church had no comment on Representative Birkeland's bill, but the faith officially opposes gambling in all its forms, including government-sponsored lotteries.
I expect opposition, but my hope is that we can all see in the bigger picture.
In addition to legalizing lotteries, Representative Birkeland says her bill would legalize charity raffles. Those are technically illegal too.
Let's be honest, everyone does them. Every lawmaker has showed up at one where it's happening, an event where that's happening. Schools do it, churches do it, everyone's doing charitable raffles. They're for a good cause, and technically by the book, they are illegal in Utah, and I think it's something that with the lottery, we can go ahead and just fix for our state.
On the Hill, Ben Winslow, Fox 13 News, Utah.
The CDC says carbon monoxide poisoning kills 420 Americans a year. And this is the time of year when those deaths are most likely.
So it is the time to make sure you do what's needed to be safe at home, also at work, and everything in between. Fox 13 News anchor Max Roth takes an in-depth look.
If you breathe too much, there are no symptoms, you die.
Did Dr. Lindell Weaver just get your attention? Carbon monoxide has killed people pretty much since the discovery of fire. Journalists near the turn of the last century reported maintenance workers, miners, and motorists killed by breathing in too much of the gas, and too much is not all that much.
Anything over 500 parts per million is lethal, potentially lethal, especially if somebody breathes it for a long enough time.
Some context. 500 parts per million would be the equivalent of adding 2 drops to a full cup of water. Those drops come from sources we all encounter.
So it might be a furnace, could be a wood-burning stove, it could be propane, LPG, it doesn't really matter what the fuel is.
Weaver treats the luckier victims of the silent, odorless killer at Intermountain Medical Center and LDS Hospital.
Typical symptoms, you feel like a flu often, headache, you just feel, not quite right, dizziness, fatigue, muscles ache sometimes, not commonly.
Carbon monoxide doesn't take as many lives today as it once did. Our houses, cars, and workplaces are safer than they were last century, but safety is all about taking precautions. Weaver shows a couple of options.
This alarm, according to Underwriter Laboratory standards, is designed not to go off until the level gets to 70 parts per million for at least 1 to 4 hours of time. And this one, on the other hand, again, you can set it to go off at much lower levels than this one.
That more sensitive yellow CO detector that Dr. Weaver showed is more expensive. It's between $50 and $100 if you'd like to get one on Amazon. Now, another thing to think about, Dr. Weaver sees a lot of carbon monoxide patients who are using power tools like a concrete cutter in a confined space. So that's a warning for all of us to know our limits when we do home improvement stuff. In studio, Max Roth, Fox 13 News, Utah.
That's very good information to hear again. Of course, as we're talking about air, what we're breathing in, the focus of air quality, it's not looking good here across northern Utah. We've seen worse situations, but this is not good where we don't see a lot of storms in the forecast to help mix out that air. So we know each and every day we'll see diminishing air quality moving ahead. Temperature right now in Salt Lake City, 34 degrees above the haze. We're looking at partly cloudy conditions here across northern Utah. Looks like mostly clear skies across central and southern Utah. As air quality in between, as I mentioned, moderate to unhealthy. We'll stay there as we move through tomorrow, Thursday as well. We'll see some slight improvements as we head into the weekend, but again, we don't have any storms rolling through the region that would help scour out this air. In addition, wind advisory in place for Weber and Davis counties. We know we're going to see some stronger East Canyon winds. Potentially, as you look at this color scheme, moving to that 40 to 50 mile per hour wind range there, again, near the canyons, where it's going to be in place, and some of the stronger wind gusts on a window between 3 a.m. to 9 a.m. That's when the advisory will expire, as we'll see that impact from Ogden all the way down through Farmington. A little bit of activity, though, as we look from Immigration Canyon, potentially also looking up through Cache Valley. Near the canyons, we could see strong wind conditions. Short-lived. It's not a situation where we just are looking at a wind advisory. This is not where we got concerns of high-profile vehicles moving through that area, as we're not going to be knocking down any trees, but definitely could move around some loose items. So secure them here in the overnight hours if you haven't done so already. Some clouds here across eastern Utah. We're not seeing any activity as far as precipitation is concerned. Our focus turns towards low pressure off towards the west. We're clearing out here across northern Utah, at least with some of the clouds above, but not clearing out with the haze. And now as this low pressure system now moves towards southern Utah and then further south, that's what's setting up the scenario and the flow. Upper level flow coming in from the east and a pressure gradient where near the surface in the canyons we'll see those stronger wind gusts as we start off for tomorrow morning, but dying off quickly heading into the late morning commute hours, where for Salt Lake City, looking hour by hour, getting you ready for tomorrow morning. Partly cloudy skies. You're driving through the haze. You're finding temperatures in the low 30s with highs getting up into the up into the low 40s. Still above average barely, still as though we're keeping those temperatures suppressed as high pressure is building in, as we're going to be on a warming trend for most spots. Looks like we'll top off at 45 degrees tomorrow in Provo. 40s in Vernal. Good news is we don't have a strong inversion through the Uinta Basin. It is setting up, but it's not going to be too strong, at least for now. Mid 40s turning towards central Utah. Expected highs in Bullfrog at 51 in Cannabis as well, and 54 in St. George, where, as I mentioned, that warming trend through the weekend. We'll see a few clouds Friday and Saturday, but no precipitation, and seeing 60s as we look towards the weekend and into next week. Northern Utah, the squiggly lines, that's the haze, hanging on to it Thursday, Friday. Slight improvements will still be around, but maybe breathing a little bit easier heading into Saturday and Sunday. But you should see over the next 7 days, no snow in the forecast.
With it being the 50th season of Utah Jazz basketball, the Jazz are celebrating each decade, and tomorrow night is 80s night. And I got a chance to sit down with the fastest of them all, former Utah Jazz point guard Ricky Green, to reflect on his favorite memories.
When I first got here, we had a That was the one when we had an 18-game losing streak.
Yep.
And we used to come to the games, and they used to wear paper bags, the fans.
No.
Frank Layden took over, and I remember this. He said, he came in the locker room, he said, we're not going to run any plays. Frank changed the whole system to running, gunning, and having fun. So he just ran up and down and broke that 18-game losing streak. And another time, Frank, he knocked on my door and said, you made the All-Star team. And I think that was one of my most exciting moments here with the Jazz.
Ricky Green scored the 5 millionth point in NBA history, and I got to relive it with him today. 5 million?
5 million point.
Yeah. On a buzzer beater three against the Cavaliers.
Here in Utah, yeah.
What was that?
Well, it was, first of all, it was only 2 games being played, us and another team, and they were going back and forth. I had no idea that I would make that shot, you know what I mean? And, you know, it was just having to make that 3 at that particular time. I don't know if that was a game B. I don't know if that was a game.
Third quarter buzzer.
Oh, third quarter buzzer. Right, okay, so I was pretty excited about it. You know, they say the ball was going to the Hall of Fame, so I am in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, you are. You signed it, and they took it straight to the Hall of Fame. That is so cool. Well, tomorrow may be 80s night, but there is still a game that has to be played. And the Jazz are hosting the New York Knicks, and Utah is currently on a 3-game losing skid. And here's Will Hardy after yesterday's 14-point loss in Oklahoma City.
Right now for me, as we're building our team, building our program, and trying to become a team that's hunting a championship, the first thing we have to address is our mindset. We need people that are willing to dig in and be physical and be tough and just sort of let it rip no matter what's going on in the game. I think that's the part for me that I'm most focused on right now. There's tactical things, sure, there's technique things, but right now when we go on the road, we don't quite have the appropriate mindset to sustain 48 minutes. And so that's our next objective.
Let it rip, but that'll do it for sports. We'll be right back.
Just into the Fox 13 newsroom, Provo police have arrested a man accused of damaging the Provo LDS temple. Police say they received a report just after 3:30 this afternoon of a man smashing windows at the temple with a hammer and then driving away. Police were able to identify 30-year-old Weston Huff as the suspect and his vehicle thanks to surveillance video. He has been booked into the Utah County Jail. We'll continue to follow this.
Thanks everyone for watching. Hope you can stick around. QuickCast is coming up next.